A lot of metal elitists have said since the early 2000s that nu metal is disappearing. But is that true? Hello everyone, it's Jay, and today I want to talk about how nu metal has not fully disappeared and it's actually still there in the background very heavily in music today. So if you happen to like my content, make sure to like, share, and subscribe, leave a comment down below on what you think, and let's get started. So if you don't know what nu metal is, it was basically a genre created by none other than Korn. But really, you could see a shift in metal whenever grunge came about in the early 90s thanks to bands like Nirvana. But when Korn stepped onto the scene in the early 90s, they created a focal point that bands would use for years to come. Nu metal used hip-hop roots with down-tuned guitar riffs alongside the producing skill of modern technology in order to create a new genre in metal, aka nu metal. A good example of this would be whenever Limp Bizkit stepped onto the scene in the mid to late 90s. Or when Cold Chamber dropped this amazing song. You started to see a shift in metal and in rock and roll. Artists like Bon Jovi, of all things, used this technique of nu metal to create a different sound. I mean, just listen to this. Change. Everybody's feeling strange. But throughout the years of nu metal and nu metal sound, it shifted to a more modern approach, mixing drum and bass with metal, and it created a different sound and a lovable sound at that. Slipknot is one of the major players in this new sound of nu metal. Like I said, we started to see more bands using this method to keep up with the times. Take Static X, for example, with their hit Cold. But a lot of metal elitists were saying at the end of the 2000s that nu metal had disappeared. But did nu metal really take a backseat like all of these metal elitists were saying it had? These elitists hated this genre of music so much that they never really saw what it brought to the metal culture or just like gothic fashion in general. I mean, you can clearly tell that throughout the late 90s and early 2000s, people were really catching on to this nu metal wave, and it really brought forth a different style. I would have to say that the gothic culture in the late 90s and early 2000s really popped off thanks to nu metal. It had such an impressive sound mixing hip hop with metal. It basically was a gateway drug or a gateway sound to gothic culture or to metal culture in general. After the late 2000s, I would say around 2010 or so, you did start to see a fall of nu metal, but it never really did fall off. One band that I can think in particular to make it pop again in the metal genre was Sworn In. I mean, just take a listen to this. They even released this. How does that sound any different from bands like Slipknot whenever they created prosthetics? This is such a unique sound that it has been imitated throughout the e-girl and TikTok community. No hate, just saying, I'm just saying, no hate at all. But Sworn In wasn't the only band to use this nu metal sound. There has been many artists to use that sound before them, but to me, Sworn In was the defining moment after the 2010s to recreate the nu metal sound that everybody was craving from the early 2000s. You started to see artists like Ghostmane and Scarlord coming up from the underground, using the technique of nu metal, mashing hip hop with drum and bass and metal. The biggest artist I see coming up right now in creating a new sound in metal is King Yourself, which hopefully I'm saying that correctly. using techniques that Korn, Slipknot, and Sworn In had started years before the 2020s. They have such a unique sound in the metal genre that it is the future of metal, and it's also the future of where metal is heading. See, nu metal never disappeared. It has always been there in the background, and it is being used heavily today. I mean, just take a look at Ghostman. With the advancements of production in music, artists can take metal into a new direction, almost like Scarlord has done, keeping up with the times because all music has an electronic beat to it these days. The metal elitists should have never written off artists like Limp Bizkit or Cold Chamber because they were really onto something in the early 2000s. They kept metal alive by bringing it into the 21st century. With the rise of hip hop and the rise of electronic music, they created a new genre within itself to bring balance within the metal culture. And it's really no secret that artists today use these advancements to keep older generations alive and well. This will be the end of my video. Nu metal has never disappeared. It's not going away. It's actually still alive and well. So if you happen to like my content, like I said in the beginning, make sure to like, share, and subscribe. Leave a comment down below on what you think, and I'm out.